Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants that have joined us today. Thank you very much for being here with us to this dialogue on understanding smallholder farmer access to voluntary sustainability standards, compliant markets. We will now begin the webinar with the opening remarks from Santiago Fernandez de Cordoba, Senior Economist and UNFSS Coordinator from UNCTAD. Santiago, over to you.
Thank you, Ruby, for that kind welcoming and opening notes. I see that people are joining, so I'm just giving people 2-3 seconds before the attendees can join into the webinar. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you from all over the world. It is great to see so many joining this dialogue aimed to help understand smallholders, farmers' access to voluntary sustainability standards compliant markets. According to the United Nations Statistic Divisions, about 9.3% of the world population today live in extreme poverty. That is about 690 million people. In this context, trade and agricultural development are strong forces in reducing poverty in developing countries and powerful tools to boost shared prosperity and feed a projected world population of 10 billion people by 2050. Extreme poverty and hunger are predominantly rural in developing countries, with smallholder farmers and their families making up a very significant proportion of the poor and hungry. Thus, eradicating poverty and hunger are linked to boosting food production, agricultural productivity, and its trade to international market. But the question lies with the ways these activities are implemented. This includes their contribution to climate change, greenhouse gases, and sometimes social issues that make small-scale farmers more vulnerable. Furthermore, trade highlights access to lucrative markets, as well as new opportunities and income and employment generation. However, trade benefits will occur only if due attention is directed to the interest of small-scale, subsistence-oriented farmers. Even today, this group suffers from marginalization. Against this background, we can note that voluntary sustainability standards are instruments that can influence how trade operates, potentially strengthen access to markets while working towards the alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, there are more than 500 sustainability standards being used along supply chains, covering a wide range of products and commodities. VSS have become a de facto market entry condition for exports from developing countries. But we should ask ourselves some questions. First, in what ways can VSS help reduce poverty from small-scale farmers? Second, how can we determine accessibility for them in VSS-compliant markets? And third, what are the public policies to support sustainable development impacts for these farmers through voluntary sustainability standards? Along with the International Institute for Sustainable Development, we conducted a field research in 6 developing countries to shed some light on the factors that influence smallholders farmers' participation in VSS-compliant market. In the next agenda item, my colleague Nimatala Elamin will present the findings from these studies. Dear participants, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development promises to leave no one behind. Meeting this ambitious agenda requires visionary policies for sustainable, inclusive, and equitable economic growth. On behalf of UNCTAD, I would like to highlight the importance for us to contribute towards eradicating poverty through the role of voluntary sustainability standards in international trade. Let me end by thanking all the speakers today for taking their time to joining us today. And also thank you to the International Institute for Sustainable Development for this research collaboration. So with this brief opening remarks, I will now turn it back to you, Ruby, so that you can direct us to the next agenda item and the presentation from my colleague, Nima. Over to you, Ruby.
Thank you very much, Santiago, for the opening remarks. While we wait for our colleagues from IISD to join in, let us go ahead with the next agenda item, the presentation from Nimatala Elamin on understanding smallholder farmer access to voluntary sustainability standards compliant markets. Nima, over to you.
Thank you, Ruby. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who joined us today. Let me first share my screen. All right. My name is Nima Elamin. I work as an associate economist at UNCTAD, and today I will be presenting the study titled Understanding Smallholder Farmer Access to VSS-Compliant Markets. And this study, this chapter, is part of IISD State of Sustainability Initiative Review, which was published in December 2021 on standards and poverty reduction. And this specific chapter aimed to shed the light on the factors that influence smallholder farmer participation in VSS compliant markets in order to help in understanding how the limitations and the challenges can be addressed, and also how the enabling factors can be harnessed. The chapter is a joint publication by IISD and UNCTAD. In today's discussion, the key topics I will be presenting. First, I will go through the aims and the methodology of the study, and after that, I will be presenting the result of the study we conducted, starting by what are the perceived advantages to VSS compliant markets, as well as what factors influence smallholder access to VSS compliant markets. And this includes the perceived enabling factors as well as the limiting factors. I will also present some of the existing supporting actions that could help smallholders market access to VSS compliant markets. And then based on the analysis of the advantages, enabling factors and limiting factors, I will be presenting and going through the recommendations we provided in this study. So as I mentioned, this specific chapter aimed to study what are the factors that influence smallholder farmer access to VSS compliant markets, and what limitations exist, and what enabling factors could help in order to use these factors and make the enabling factors harnessed for positive sustainable development. The selection of the the selection of the countries and the commodities that are included in the study was based on a comprehensive analysis of several factors, both on the supply side, which is the exports of these countries, and also the demand side, which are the imports to potential markets. And because the whole publication focused on poverty reduction through standards. So the selection of the country was based on several macroeconomic indicators, as well as trade indicators and VSS coverage indicators. So on the macroeconomic side, we focused on issues related to the poverty ratio in different developing countries around the world. And also because we are covering the agricultural VSS, we focused on the significance of the agriculture sector to the developing countries. We had in mind what, for example, is the percentage of agriculture at agriculture value added as a percentage of the GDP, and also the ratio of the employment in agriculture in different countries. Also, on the trade indicators, the commodities that we had in mind, we also studied and looked at their significance to the economy of these countries. So we looked at the level of exports of different commodities in the countries that we had in mind, and also we focus on the share of the exports of specific commodities to the country's total exports. And also we looked at some VSS coverage indicators, because here we are studying the impact of VSS on the market access. So we had to select commodities that do have some certifications and labeling that are working on certifying these specific commodities, and by that we covered the supply side, like macroeconomic indicators, trade indicators, as well as the VSS coverage indicators. And we also had to look at the demand side to see if there is an existing market of these specific commodities, a market for certified products. Do, for example, the consumers in the importing countries are willing to pay extra price for certified products of these specific commodities, and we use a sample of EU countries to check the demand side, and by that we ended up choosing 2 countries per region, 2 developing countries per region, and we chose to work on the value chain of banana in Guatemala, avocado in Colombia, coffee in Rwanda, cashew in Guinea-Bissau, cotton in India, and rice in Cambodia. After that, we designed the method of the study to be based on information from interviews and surveys from the main actors in the 6 value chains that we chose. And this included producers and producers organization, NGOs, VSS certification bodies, government, buyers and exporters, as well as financial service providers. And looking at the pie chart to the right, we see that most of the respondents were from producers or from producers organizations. 35% of the respondents were producers, and this is followed by buyers and government, who each represented around 21% of our sample. We had less representation from NGOs and VSS certification bodies, which was 12% and 9% respectively, and finally fewer from the finance sector, who were financial service providers. And the study was based, as I mentioned, on information from interviews and surveys, and the questions included in the surveys were open-ended questions as well as closed-ended questions, which were adapted from the UNFSS VSS assessment toolkit. And the questions aim to get the perceptions of the smallholder, the perception of the respondents on what factors affect the smallholder market access to VSS compliant markets. It conducted a diverse range of different factors that are related to for example, social aspects or factors, economic and physical, policy, environmental, human factors, as well as standard-related factors. I will start by showing what in the results by showing what were the perceived advantages, and so the respondents, when they were asked their opinion on what are the main advantages of complying with VSS, the price premium came out as the main advantage across all countries, and the second main advantage in India. So respondents looked at the price premium as the main advantage. 63% of them referred to it as the main advantage they get from complying with VSS. This was followed by access to training and improved farm practices, and the respondents looked at the training that they get as a part of the certification as a way to improve the technical knowledge and also to improve the capacity, which eventually leads to improve farm practices. Also, it leads to acquire quality inputs, and this leads eventually as well to improve the productivity and improve the product quality, and could help increase the sales volume. So for the respondents, the training is a way to improve the practices and lead to higher and improved productivity. 37% of the respondents refer to market access and assurance because getting certified means that they will have, and this could lead to a pre-established long-term contracts. And this will assure them that their produce is going to be purchased and helps in improving their market access to developed countries' markets. And fewer respondents refer to producer organization and voice as one of the main advantages, and very few refer to the environmental and health benefits. When we looked at the data per country, per each country separately, to a great extent, there was a consistent with the result of the overall result that I presented in the previous slide. The price premium stands out as the main advantage across all countries except for India. And in India, we were working on the cotton value chain, and here most of the respondents, the producers, were certified or have experience with Better Cotton Initiative, and BCI does not offer differential pricing or set premiums for any type of raw or finished product. So that's why the price premium was not referred by them, mostly was not referred by them at the main advantage. However, overall, the better price and premiums and the access to training are looked at as the main advantages also across countries, and when we look at countries separately. We also disaggregated the data to look at the what do the producers say and what do they think are the main advantages. And as we can see from the figure, that producers do value access to training and improved farm practices more than the better prices and premiums, although the difference is not that high. 60% of the producers refer to access to training and improved farm practices, and 55 refer to better prices and premiums. However, this does show that the producers do value the access to training, the improved knowledge, the improved farm practices, which leads eventually to improved productivity and improved also sales or increased sales volume over time. Next, we looked at the perceived limiting factors. What exactly limits smallholders and farmers in developing countries from VSS-compliant markets? And we analyzed both open-ended questions and closed-ended questions, and this revealed 6 main categories of factors that could potentially limit smallholder farmer access to VSS-compliant markets. As you can see in the figure that some of these factors are related to producers' capacity to comply, others are related to access to resources, including financial and non-financial resources. Some constraints are environmental and related to the environment where the producers work, and others are VSS-specific factors that are related to the design of the VSS themselves and how do they work. Some factors are related to the supply chain structure, how long it is and how the power is distributed along the supply chain. And finally, some factors were related to the competition, the market demand, and the trade policy. So looking at the components of each one of the categories separately, we can see that with regard to the producer capacity to comply with standards and their capacity as well to maintain standards, lack of time was perceived as one of the very main limiting factors, and over twice as many, I think 77 of respondents highlighted that the time commitment that is needed to become VSS is a limiting factor. And here this can be explained through the fact that to be complied with VSS and to comply with VSS, there is a need to change the production practices and to also change the process in order to meet the criteria, and also to meet the quality and to meet the volume. And given the low education, low skills, and low knowledge of producers in developing countries, this is a limiting factor for them. It means that they need to invest more time in the process of getting certified or transforming into their farms into certified ones. So that's why the issue of the lack of time was raised as one of the main limiting factors, given that VSS needs lots of change in the process, and at the same time there is a low level of skills and knowledge which make it harder for them to get the certification. Actually, the low education skills and knowledge also was referred to as the second main limiting factors in this category, which is related to the producer capacity to comply. When looking at the factors under access to resources, the limited access to financial services was identified as a key constraint. Almost 80% of the respondents referred to it as a main constraint. And this was the same across countries and across different categories. The respondents as well referred to some environmental constraints that could limit their capacity to comply with the quality and to comply with the volume. And for example, issues related to insufficient water availability, also the poor soil quality and the change in weather patterns. Sometimes the natural disasters could also affect and could also work as limiting factors to VSS compliant markets. Looking at the category of VSS specific factors, the cost of the certification stands out as the main limiting factor. Here, almost more than 75% of the respondents refer to it as the main limiting factors. And the cost, in addition to be investment, producers need to make to meet VSS and market requirement and also to monitor them. So here, the respondents as well refer to limited support and monitoring as also a significant constraint that is related to the VSS design and how the standards work. With regard to the supply chain structure and the power relations, here the respondents refer to limited access to market information as the main limiting factor, and also to the design of the supply chain itself, that there are too many supply chain intermediaries. And this makes the connection between the producers and the buyers weaker, and affects the voice and representation as well of the farmers and the producers in the value chain, and of course affect their ability to get timely information and to have a direct access to foreign markets. Also, respondents refer to some other issues related to the competition, the market demand, and the trade policy. Some of the respondents refer to the important country trade policies and the monetary policies within the countries, inside the countries, as a limiting factors that affect their ability to get certified and affect their market access to VSS compliant markets. So overall, lack of time, limited access to financial resources, as well as cost of the certification, the supply chain structure, the important country trade policies, and some environmental factors related to the water availability and the soil quality are the main limiting factors to VSS compliant markets in the countries that we studied. Then we asked the respondents, what do they think are the enabling factors that could help in dealing with the limiting factors, or decreasing and declining the impact of the limiting factors, and help them more to access VSS compliant markets. And 70% of the respondents refer to supporting actors, information, and training. So enabling producers to implement compliant farming practices requires support from different actors and requires access to information. And as one of the interviewee explained, that smallholders first need the knowledge of the rules, and then they need to put the rules in practice, and finally they sell the product to VSS compliant markets. So the way that the respondents look at the training as one of the main advantages, and here the main enabling factor signifies the importance of training, information, and knowledge sharing. With regard to the second enabling factor, the producers refer to market demand and direct link with buyers, and this is linked to their view to the structure of the supply chain, or the having too many brokers or intermediaries within supply chain as one of the significant obstacles in accessing VSS compliant markets. So here, more than half of the study respondents identified the market demand, which here means steady and secure market demand, and the direct links to buyers as one of the main enabling factors. Some producers, also 40% of producers, refer to producer organization, and producer organization means stronger voice of the producers in the different in the value chain, and leads as well to for producers to be able to facilitate the negotiations with financiers as well as negotiations with buyers. 37% of producers refer to the price incentive as one of the main enabling factors, and also respondents refer to access to financial resources as one of the main enabling factors. When we looked at the data at each country level, to a great extent, also we see that there is a consistency between the different in the different countries. Although overall the result is consistent, but also sometimes there are some different stories from each country. For example, we see here Colombia referred to the price incentive as the main advantage, while Cambodia looks at producer organization, main enabling factor. Cambodia looks at the producer organization as one of the as the main enabling factor. And here, because the circumstance and also the story of each country is in a way different. For example, in Cambodia, there was one of the obstacles and the problem was the delay in payment that the producers had to go through for different reasons. And that's why here for them, producer organization is an enabling factor, because it increases the voice and the strengthens their voice in the value chain. Due to the time constraint, I cannot go through each one differently, but I invite you all to check the whole chapter, which I put the link to in the end of the presentation. However, overall, the story is around the supporting actions and the access to the market demand and access to direct access to buyers. So based on that, we provided some recommendations for VSS, for value chain actors, and also for governments. With regard to the first thing that is really stands out through the presentation, that I mentioned the issue of knowledge training many times, and it was really obvious that farmers and also all the participants in the study do refer to it a lot. So smallholders needs to understand how VSS function, the rules, and what do they require, their market performance, so they know what farming practices they need to adopt, and also to know what market opportunities exist or do not exist. So producing country governments, as well as VSSs and as well as NGOs, could work on a way to improve the knowledge and increase the awareness and establish guidance and training to smallholders and producers in developing countries. Also increase the access to financial resources, given the cost of the certification, as well as the fact that this issue was raised by the respondents, that the access to financial resources is hard for them. So the international community, in a collaboration with financial service, could provide and offer direct market linkages, also affordable financing models that is easily accessible for them. One of the recommendations also is to support smallholder access to productive lands and to stimulate the demand for sustainable products. So governments in both producing and consuming countries could kindle demand for VSS-compliant products in order to encourage and to support VSS-compliant production and trade. And also, there is a need to strengthen the producer organization because strengthening the producer organization means higher voice for them, mean that they could negotiate with financiers and with buyers, and they could participate in the decision-making process. There is a need to increase their power and voice and help them to push back against unfair buyer practices. On the other hand, the standards organization could work on adapting the standards to local context, and adapting standards to local context helps in make the standards less costly to producers, and also makes standards more relevant to them and more accessible to smallholders and producers. Simplifying and harmonizing standards across VSS could also support smallholder producer effort to become VSS compliant, because this reduces the amount of time, also the cost of the information, and the financial investment that is needed for compliance across multiple standards. Also, one of the recommendations could be to define financial reward measures for farmers. Compliance with standards requires substantial investment by producers. So that's why prices and premiums must be increased for VSSs to contribute meaningfully to producer income and to ensure a living wage and living income for producers. And last but not least, to systematically include smallholders in VSS decision-making, empower them, and help them to increase their power and their voice, and to participate in the decision-making process. Thank you. You can download the full chapter. And also more, if you would like to know more information on the UNCTAD VSS Assessment Toolkit, you can go to the link here. And we also have a post-webinar survey that we are going to be sharing with you all to get your opinion, and looking forward to the discussion. Over to you, Ruby.
Thank you very much, Nima. Just so you know, the links will be also shared with you in our email after this event, in our summary email after this event. Moving for the next item, allow me to invite Dr. Sarah Elder, Policy Advisor in Sustainability Standards from the International Institute for Sustainable Development. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Ruby, and thanks, Nima, for your presentation. As Ruby said, my name is Sarah Elder, Senior Policy Advisor at IISD and lead author of IISD's recent State of Sustainability Initiatives report on standards and poverty reduction. This is the 6th of our flagship series that IISD initiated in 2010. And in conducting research for this report, we found that enabling market access is one aspect that can support farmers to reduce poverty. So we're very pleased to partner with UNCTAD to explore this factor in a chapter of this study. And we're really happy to co-host this webinar with UNCTAD and present and explore the findings of this chapter here today with you. We found, as Nima mentioned, that when these enabling factors are in place, they can help enable smallholder farmer access to VSS compliant markets. Which factor is most relevant will depend on the country, as she mentioned. We saw that where VSS production is only starting to emerge, for example, in Guinea-Bissau, supporting actors' information and training are most important, whereas in countries where producers have already begun to implement compliant practices, the more important enabling factor becomes adequate market demand and having direct links to buyers. Now I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all our speakers who will share their perspectives and experiences on this topic. Thanks for being with us today. We have Dr. Hermogen Nsengimana, Secretary General of the African Organization for Standardization. Welcome. Ruqayyah Rafiq from the Indonesian Sustainable Palm Oil Farmers Forum, for TASBI. Ron Van Meer, Senior Advisor, Corporate Social Responsibility at CBI, the Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries. And Yolanda Mayora, Corporate Sustainability Manager at Guatemalan Exports Association, Ag Exports. After panelists share their experiences, then we'll also open the floor to questions from the audience. So please formulate your questions in the Q&A chat and we'll be able to direct them to the speakers. So now, without further ado, I hand the floor to you, Dr. Nsengimana, and please, we look forward to hearing your remarks.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you, UNCTAD, for the invitation to be on this panel. Nima, they started a good presentation. Actually, when I saw the recommendation and the findings, it talks to the EcoMark Africa that we have at the level of our African Organization for Standardization. When you look at the recommendation, some of them, like adapting standard to local context, this is the approach that we have under the ARSO. What we developed till now for umbrella standard. We call them umbrella standard because we have agriculture, we have forestry, we have tourism and fisheries. But within those standards now, we look at the product, the goods themselves. Under agriculture, as an example, we have cocoa standard. It was a demand from the farmers themselves. And we had cocoa organization, association participating in the development of the standard, being part of the MIRA committees at the country level. And we see really the impact because after the publication of those standards on cocoa, the countries managed to adopt those standards and the farmers are using those standards. I think adapting the standard to the local context is really, really very important and very key, and coordinate with those farmers while we are harmonizing those standards. The other part on this approach is we have what we call maturity model. Maturity model linked to the access on the market through the supply chain. We don't need, we have standard people usually, we have these issues of playing as a policeman. Where you just go check indicators. If you fail on one indicators, you close the shop of the business person of the industry. We shouldn't be looking at it that way. We should improve at different levels. Which indicators can that farmer, that smallholders comply with? And at the next step, yeah, we have that certification from bronze level. We go to silver level, we go to gold level and platinum level. As you grow, as you comply with those indicators, we can now connect you to the bigger players in the value chain. I think that is the good approach that we should move and see how we manage, we help the small farmers enter the market and comply to VSS. The other part is we look at the long term. What do we see as long term? Our long term is to be able also to connect on regional value chain, not at just the country level. How can those certified in Kenya, as example, connect in the whole East Africa and have a bigger voice? Because this came out also from the study of organization of producers. If we manage to connect them at the regional level, we will be actually moving forward to add a new product for the voluntary sustainability standard. The other part is not just to look at the international market, because this has been an issue that we developed the VSS standard for external market. But we got good examples on the continental level. One company in Kenya, which was certified EcoMark, managed actually to access the local market at the national level. It's mean that it's not only the certification to access a Western market, it's also the certification to be able open up new market at the national level. I also liked the issue of training. Because we found out that in the different survey we conducted with the certified companies, that they improved their system, they improved their management, the quality assurance within the institution. And the last, Sarah, we need to not only look at the sustainability standard at the level of agriculture. We need to move forward now in other areas. One key area that we are targeting currently on Africa is textiles and leather. Yeah, this is a very, very crucial area that we need to see moving forward in the next years to develop the standard on textile. The other part is on energy issues. Yeah, that is very important for us on the continent. But more important also, you see the automotive value chain. The automotive value chain, I guess you heard recently in Kenya, they launched a matatu, what we call the taxis in Kenya, a matatu which is electrical. Yeah, we need really to move forward also in this bigger value chain like automotive industry. This is our next target, that we go and extend from the 4 sectors to include those other new sectors. I thank you.
Thank you very much. You provide some really a lot of good insight for us in how you're approaching this at ARSO and involving farmers, so that they themselves adopt them. Very important. Thank you so much. I'd like to now invite Ruqayyah Rafiq to say a few words.
Hi, thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening from Indonesia, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of the this event. I think this is a good event, the webinar, and yeah, I was see the NIMA presentation. I see talking about the local food. For example, is avocado and rice and also cashew. But now I'm here is for palm oil. So if we are talking about the palm oil, so someone will thinking about the deforestation, about the conflict, about the exploitation. So I'm here just want to bring the voices from independent smallholders from Indonesia who planted of the palm oil. And my name is Ruqayyah Rafiq. I'm from Fortasbi. Fortasbi is Indonesian Sustainable Palm Oil Smallholder Forum. And this forum is created by independent smallholders group in Indonesia, and all of our members, we already have member 10,000 of the smallholders from Indonesia and from North Sumatra to East Kalimantan. Currently, we already have 10,000 of the independent smallholders, with the total of the area hectares is 22,000 of hectares. So that means all of the smallholders is the small land size. They have about 2 hectares and 3 hectares each families. And all of our smallholders, all of our members is certified, because Fortasbi is, if they are agreed to certification or implement the sustainability standard, so they can be a part of our member. And some of them, mostly of them, implemented RSPO certification, and yeah, and also they also implement, or they are also certified of ISPO. ISPO is the Indonesian Sustainable Standard. This is our national standard, and we also have member. They are certified of ISCC. This is for the sustainability carbon certification. Yes. Why? In my view, is certification is very important for the smallholders, because the certification, through certification, they can learn about everything about the sustainability standard. Because in sustainability standard, it's not only talking about the economy, not only talking about increasing their income, but also but the standard also talking about environment rehabilitation, and also talking about the respect to the worker right, and also respect to the child right. And we understand that this is also the goal of the UN for the SDGs. And yeah, certificates, as also Nima said, that the certification is costly for the smallholders. So this is also same in the palm oil sectors. So when the independent smallholder want to go to the certification, they have to prepare for everything. They have to have a good organization. They have to develop the training for their member, and also they have to have the legal of their land. So for the preparing certification, they need fund for that. They need the finance support for that. So if we compare, because now we already have the 10,000, this is from total in Indonesia, we have the 10,000 smallholders certified. But if we compare with the total of independent smallholders in Indonesia, we have 2.8 million smallholders. So this is very significant. But if we see the number of the smallholders who already implement the sustainability is very small. So this is also our big homework, how to bring all of independent smallholders to implement the sustainability. Because as I said in the previous, in the beginnings, that the certification is like the learning process for the smallholders. If they implement the sustainability, that means they already learn many things about the standard of the sustainability. Because, you know, as I know, because my father is for the smallholders, my father is palm oil smallholders. So when I'm talking with my father about the standard, they said that I didn't know about standard because I'm only thinking how to get the money, how to get much money from my farm. So yeah, based on this, as I know that mostly of independent smallholders in the palm oil, they're only thinking about the money. So this is our responsibility to how we transform the sustainability in the village level. Because if the smallholder or independent smallholder implement the sustainability in their farm, that means they will understand how to respect to the social, or how to respect to their worker, how to respect or to the environment. Okay, because if they are not respect to the all of the standard, that means they can comply with the sustainability standard. So thank you. This is only my view and my long word. And back to you, Ruby.
Thank you so much. I hear you that it's, you know, echoed in the results of the study as well, that, you know, certification is important for that access to training and learning that comes alongside with it. It's, you know, it's that alongside other benefits, and it's that learning process. So great to hear that that's also something that you're seeing in the case of Fortasby. Ron Van Meer, can I hand the floor over to you now? Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Sarah. So first of all, thank you very much for the kind invitation to participate in this webinar on the topic of voluntary sustainability standards. My name is Ron Van Meer, and I'm a senior advisor in corporate social responsibility at CBI in the Netherlands. At CBI, we support the transition towards inclusive and sustainable economies. We focus on transitions and sectors in developing countries working towards becoming more inclusive and sustainable. We start from the perspective of local SMEs or smallholder organizations, strengthening the economic, social, and environmental sustainability through exports or value-added and/or niche products to European and regional markets. We raise awareness, build capacity, act as a knowledge broker, support market and value chain linkage, and promote the use of technology on multiple levels. CBI is active in 3 main sectors and over 14 subsectors. The 3 main sectors are agriculture, fishery and forestry, consumer products and services. We mainly work in target countries in the Middle East and North Africa, West Africa, Sahel, East Africa, and some specific Asian countries. Voluntary sustainability standards serve as a tool to ensure good social and environmental practices. Through certification, you can show your buyers and end consumers that you comply with different sustainability requirements. There are many different certification schemes, as we all know, and each with their own scope and focus. This makes it very important to know which standard is relevant for what product, market, and segment. It will help you to make the right decisions when choosing a specific standard and may increase your access to the European market. According to the so-called standards map of the International Trade Center, or ITC, there are more than 300 standards, 316 at the moment to be precise, or even more, as we heard at the beginning. Sustainability standards and certifications normally include social and organic and or economic aspects, but the specific emphasis may vary widely. What is clear is that they come in different flavors. However, research shows that voluntary approaches need also to be complemented with laws and binding regulations. Companies like importers and distributors in Europe have long been encouraged to take responsibility of their supply chains on a voluntary basis. As results were not sufficient, some countries decided to introduce national mandatory due diligence laws for companies. There's also been a broader push for mandatory due diligence legislation on a European level. These include new laws on human rights and environmental due diligence. These laws are currently being developed and are expected to come into force in 2023. European companies typically deal with this either through specific second-party supplier questionnaires or through third-party social compliance audits. Controls by an independent third party are seen as more credible and reliable than self-verification. Otherwise, it would be like marking your own homework. With certification standards, it is most demanded in the EU, in the European Union, differs largely per sector. In general, Fair Trade, Fair for Life, Rainforest Alliance are among the most demanded product certification standards in the agri-food sectors, apart from the organic ones. A very practical recommendation to smallholder organizations: make a good cost-benefit analysis of the standard you would like to implement or comply with. Make a very detailed calculation of the one-off cost and recurring costs attached to compliance and audit costs, and compare those to the potential economic and other benefits of the standard. Too often, in my opinion, smallholders organizations only focus on the premium or minimum prices that are included in the standard and do not sufficiently take into account the costs or the fact that certified volume of product already exceeds the demand in the market. So although you will be able to offer certified products, there won't be enough interested buyers. Before determining whether certification is the right move for your organization and which standard offers the most opportunities, you need to have a good understanding of the hurdles you can expect. For an overview of possible hurdles related to social certification standards, you can see our recent study entitled "What is the current offer in social certifications and how will it develop?", which is available for free and can be consulted at our website at www.cbi.eu. In the second part of my intervention, I would like to give some pointers for smallholders organizations that want to adopt sustainable practices as a starting point to build sustainable trade relationships for export to the EU, in random order. First, it all starts and ends with demand. Now, this may sound very obvious, but it's often forgotten. The export market may offer a good opportunity business case for your organization, or it may not, and actually be risky. The simple first question should be: in which market is there a demand for my product, and what are the specific pros and cons of accessing market A or B? Think about mandatory and voluntary regulations and normal business practices like price, required volume, quality, etc. Remember, voluntary sustainability standards do not imply that your product is of high quality. What is the demand of the smallholders or supplier base? Is there a good match or not, etc.? The second point is smallholders organization is a business and should be run like one. Quite often, smallholders organizations emphasize their not-for-profit goal and easily forget the important role and responsibility they have to help building economic sustainability for the organizations and their members and stakeholders. Development cooperation can play an important role for the strengthening of the organization, but subsidies and other external support will be finite. At the same time, each farmer's plot should be run as a small business. Organizations should actively promote and support this business-like approach. They could work with small business plans that can be simple and easy to understand. Thirdly, be proactive instead of reactive. Some developments on the export market may sound less relevant to your organization or appear still far away in time. But remember, it takes time and resources to prepare yourself to become compliant, should you decide to do so. Fourth, always remember, what is voluntary may quickly become mandatory. We can see clear signs already that some sustainability topics that were nice to have are very quickly becoming mandatory, or are already being incorporated into laws or other binding regulation. Think about topics like child labor, deforestation, etc., living income, living wage. 5, the importance of data-driven decision-making. It is the process of using data to make informed and verified decisions. Use digital solutions for data collection and storage and use it for management decisions, to evaluate loan application from smallholders or to target your technical assistance and training activity. 6, use fair trade and other niche markets as leverage to enter the conventional market, but don't limit yourself to these niche markets. Too much organizations that have built a strong relationship with fair trade importers forget that this will always remain a niche market with increasing competition, even between smallholders organizations. Depending on the specific product, many fair trade and Rainforest Alliance certified organizations sell maybe 50% or less of the total sales volume under fair trade conditions. So there's always a need to sell the rest of your produce on the conventional market. Use the fair trade benefits to learn and to grow, and above all, to unlock new commercial opportunities. 7, diversification, 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 to state the obvious. The principle of diversification applies to many business practices, supply a client base, product, markets, etc. But be aware of loss of focus and the minimum efficient scale at which the business has to operate. Make sure that the unit cost is at its lowest possible point while the organization is producing its goods effectively. Or think about the importance of risk distribution. A popular saying goes, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And 8, and final point, foster and participate in multi-stakeholder initiatives in your country and abroad. Smallholders organizations do not operate in a vacuum. National governments play an important role and can assist smallholders organizations in reaching common goals and in developing a real enabling environment. Organizations and government bodies or civil society organizations can work together in public-private partnerships. The same goes for international stakeholder initiatives with the participation of international businesses and NGOs. Concluding, at CBI, we stimulate economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable trade and production through export by local SMEs and smallholder organizations to Europe and to regional markets, by stimulating effective sector alignment and contributing to supporting and regulatory functions. At CBI, we hope to make SMEs and smaller organizations we support more resilient and future-proof. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ron. It was great to hear from an importing country perspective from CBI. What are the best practices you've identified to support smallholder export readiness and these practical things to consider? Appreciate that. Yolanda Mayara, I would like to invite you to say a few words on behalf of Ag Export of Guatemala.
Thank you very much for the invitation to this important dialogue and presentation of the study, about which we share most of the findings and conclusions. I would like to address my comments based on the experience we have in the association in the development of rural value chain. Let me share some related background first. Guatemala Exporters Association is a private entity founded over 40 years ago with the mission of making Guatemala an export country based on competitiveness and innovation. Regards the country, Guatemala has a great cultural, natural, and human wealth in the largest and more stable economy in Central America, classified as an upper middle income country, but we don't have translated to a significant reduction in poverty and inequality. Guatemala has the 4th highest rate in chronic malnutrition in the world, with indigenous and rural population disproportionately affected. The impact of COVID pandemic is estimated to have increased the poverty rate to 52% in 2020. The agricultural sector is very, very important, a main source of employment and a generation of opportunities in the country. And export agriculture represent 30% of the country agriculture activity, generating more than 67% of the jobs in rural areas. In this context, I'm convinced that the market access is a key element for wealth generation. With the support of international cooperation and public-private partnerships, export has developed a business chain methodology as an integral rural development tool that links small producers to the export chain in order to generate jobs, incomes, and contribute to poverty reduction in the most vulnerable areas in the country. The methodology has been implemented in the past 10 years with very important results. We have applied to more than 200 agricultural change. We thinking to link markets to more than 35,000 producers and generating sales over the $70 million with tangible results on poverty reduction by 16%. The associative capacity of small rural producer has important, it was a determining element for the success of these efforts. The business change methodology consists in 5 stages. First, a territorial diagnosis of the value chain. Participatory process with the small producers and some key local actors have to identify productive potential, natural resources, governance systems, business and entrepreneurial situation, even social conflict situation in the zones, leaderships and key players in the territorial value chain. Second, market access based on productive potential alliance are identified with the potential buyers that can link to the value chain. Intervention must be developed based on a market demand in terms of volume, quality, systematic delivery, traceability, which is very important on the VSS to be implemented, safety, to ensure competitiveness on the value chain. The negotiation between small producers and buyers promoting a win-win trade relation is crucial in these systems. Third, territorial value chain plan. This plan must be technical and an operational tool of territorial value chain. It has to be developed in a participatory manner with association actors, defines the intervention strategies that have to the potential to generate employments and income, improve family living conditions, and promote the integral management of natural resources in the zones. 4, formalization of a governance structures and strategic alliances in order to implement the territorial value chain plans in the areas. This is very important to have a close coordination of all actions, including key actors such as small producers, local and national governments, buyers, investors, and cooperation organization and agency bodies. 5th, implementation of territorial value chain plans. These need to be implemented by specialized teams of professionals and technicians under a rural extension scheme and with specialized services dedicated to agriculture, modernizations, innovations, transfers capacities, using learning by doing and farmer-to-farmer methodologies and cascade approach with a specialist responsible for the execution of plant coordination and working groups, linking partners with all actors working in the territory. And finally, the monitoring and evaluation must be put in place to measure the progress in the project and indicators in real time. There are some cross-cutting key issues to be incorporated in this model. First, social inclusion, which means gender approach and youth and indigenous populations. Second, sustainability of the efforts, including the commitment for a broader poverty strategy. Third, engagement of key stakeholders for agricultural development and food security and social issues in our case. Fourth, close coordination between actors. And fifth, social and behavior change communications to make these necessary mindset changes. This model has proven that it's possible to achieve changes if you have an enabling environment, including an ecosystem of supporting actors that work closely with smaller farmers. This is our experience that I would like to share today, related absolutely with all these topics that we are discussing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. It's really interesting to hear from the case of Guatemala and Ag Export. What you found is the model, this business change methodology that works to support smallholders in Guatemala. Thank you. Christina, would you like to make a comment, and we'll move to the Q&A?
Yeah, thanks very much, all of the wonderful speakers, for your valuable insights. I'm Christina, colleague of Sarah and lead of the Sustainability Standards work. Before we move to the Q&A, because we have few questions that have been put in the chat, and Sarah would address it to the panelists, I would like to provide a few remarks. You know, we have our speakers come from Africa, Indonesia, Latin America, and Europe. We are very honored to have the representative of different visions across the world. I would like to mention a few things. You know, for Mr. Emergene, adaptation of standards to local reality. I think this is very critical, and it is very important. It's coming from ARSO, and is very valuable, that insight, as well as the stage approach, support farmers to adopt, you know, at different levels. And I think some of the sustainability standards are already moving into that direction. I'm thinking of Global Gap, I'm thinking of others that are, and the new Rainforest Alliance, and very good point. And also very important, your remark on regional value chains. I think this is critical, how we can support, you know, farmers comply to sustainable practices and these standards, and be integrated regionally. And ARSO and Africa EcoMark provides a great potential for that. And we hope to see that happening and supporting those efforts. And very critical, because I don't think we need to diversify, as Ron was saying, not only selling to compliant products to Europe and North America, but within our own, you know, countries in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. A few remarks from Mrs. Rukayjang Rakik in joining us from Asia. I think very important that you see that the smallholder farmers value the economic, social, and environmental contribution of sustainability standards, not only the economic. And this is important to evolve this mindset that Yolanda was talking about, that was part of their strategy in Guatemala. And also the important part of cost and the access to finance that came out also in our research that we conducted with Junta and Niema presented early on. And I would like to say that recently at ISD, we have done a bit of work on this issue of access to finance and standards. And we have seen that there is, in the last few years, there is more innovative financial models that support farmers, smallholder farmers, to access financial resources. And one element critical for that, that's there are multiple investors joining efforts and to share the risk. One provides the finance, the other provides the first loss guarantee, the buyer supports the smallholders to comply with the quality. The standards are there also to advance sustainable practices. And more importantly, there are financial products that reward farmers for their sustainable practices. They offer lower interest rates. So there are practices already happening there that it would be important to consider in order to enable all these farmers in Indonesia to move to sustainable practices. And we can follow later on. I think from Ron, thank you so much for your wonderful, suggestions and elements from, you know very well from CBI what is needed for smallholder farmers and small business to move and to export to other countries, including Europe. I would just remark a few things. The importance of the cost-benefit analysis. This is critical, and we in ISD we also found out this issue in our country work. And the importance to do that analysis, not only the cost, but also the benefits. Is there a demand for that particular product before you adopt this standard? Is there a demand for that? Are there buyers already there? And I think Niema already mentioned about this as a critical factor. And I would also would like to say the importance of the quality, as well as knowing the requirements of the market is critical for smallholder farmers and businesses that Ron mentioned. And, all this issue that I think it makes a connection between what Yolanda mentioned on Rod. At the end of the day, smallholder farmers are small and medium-sized enterprises, or are linked to small and medium-sized enterprises, and the importance to strengthen the business capacities, in the governments, in the management, in the commercial relationship, and in collecting data that is relevant for them. And finally, Yolanda, thanks very much for sharing your remarks on the landscape approach. I think it's very important. It comes in different moments, in different dialogues, that standards can evolve towards enabling this landscape territorial vision, so that we build with the potentialities of the different capacities of the producers and of the territory, and it can enable this coordination of actors in order to boost sustainable practices. I would also recall what you mentioned on traceability. And we can chat a bit more in the Q&A, but it's critical to support farmers and agribusiness to do product traceability, being able to confirm where does the product comes from, which farm, what are the practices behind that, what are the social inclusion approaches. I would like to, because very valuable insights on this conversation coming from all the coins, all the parts of the world. So and now I pass the word to my colleague Sarah, and we're going to go through a Q&A, and please feel free to drop your question on the chat if you have further questions. Please, Sarah.
Thank you, Christina. And one of those points that came out, I think, from everyone is this issue of market demand. And we also had some questions related to that. So let's start there. For example, there was a very good point from Hermogen on the regional markets and regional chains in Africa. And so how can we develop demand for VSS compliant products in Africa, in regions, for these regional chains to happen? Could you comment on that?
I will give one example, on the standard we have on tourism, where the hotel, at least one hotel was certified against ECOMA. It's good to link to the public procurement if you want to support like that hotel. If there are government meetings or being organized, that hotel should be given priority. Procurement is a very, very good tool to use for implementation of these unconventional standards, if I can call it that way. This is very important because when you look at the study that Niema was presenting, it's a pity to see that the environmental issue is lagged behind. Yeah, you saw that. Yeah, meaning really the mindset is not about the environment. The mindset is accessing the market. The mindset is on training issues, as we saw, on the price. Yeah, it's not like people are thinking about environmental protection. The other part is, as I said, not targeting. I think also Ron said it. We don't need to only target the international market. Let's also see at the national market, in our supermarket, as we create a sites of organic goods, can we create sites of sustainably produced goods in those supermarkets? because we started teaching the consumers. Yeah, as we teach the consumers, this will move along, and the people now get the mindset to know, okay, if I am going to buy something, let me first check what is sustainably produced. I think this issue will help. Lastly is to involve those farmers. Yeah, the good example, I gave that example on cocoa. Yeah, that is a really good example that we have farmers in Cote d'Ivoire, farmers in Ghana, farmers in Togo using that standard because they were involved. They were involved from the beginning. The issue of probably linking to the market, it's very, very good looking at the buyers first, and you try to help the farmers to connect to the market by organizing the fairs, different fairs. It can really help to move forward. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, the fairs, okay, you have some great ideas there. I'd like to now move on and have, oh, Ron, you'd like to mention something. That'd be great. We also had a question related to how consumers appreciate products that are VSS compliant apart from good prices. Please go ahead, Ron.
No, I was just thinking about how to promote, let's say, the sale of sustainable products in regional or national markets. And I think what has been quite successful in many countries, even Europe and the United States, is not to push the whole sustainability package, but to emphasize the organic and the health issue, because that's a very sensitive area where consumers can relate to quite easy. And then you can bring in the other factors surrounding sustainability as a broader concept. I think it could be quite successful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I have seen a case of that where the government in Nicaragua was pushing, GAP vegetables produced according to good agricultural practices, and there was increasing knowledge among consumers in Nicaragua that this was important in their purchases. Yolanda, would you like to add something as well? I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I would like to put on the table two issues that I consider you can help with the governments and other actors as buyers in order to the VSS to be a real tool to reduction of poverty. First of all, better understanding on the environment and reality of the producing countries, adapting the requirements to real conditions based on science. As an example, the use of pesticides and the maximum residues limits, which is put in place, which is unrealistic, and it will affect on a bad matter the exports of some products, at least in the Latin American countries. And the second issue is to promote incentive schemes, alliances, and cooperation projects that allow us to be competitive in demanding markets and comply the standards. The CBI is one of our partners in this issue, and it will be very important to continue support the small producers, because sometimes the buyers don't recognize the premium, and this affects absolutely the scheme of partnerships within the small producers and the exports. And finally, there is an issue that concerns me a lot, and is the private rules that supermarkets impose out of the normatives of all these issues. This is another important issue that can affect the VSS as a poverty reduction tools. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. I saw, the cost of certification has come up for smallholder farmers as well. And we had a question to Makaya about, you've mentioned the relevance of finance to access standards for small farmers. And the question was, do you have a particular strategy, either public, private, or from CSOs or all to support them with this finance? Must they use their own resources, or what have you found has been successful in supporting smallholders to access finances?
Yeah, thank you, Shara. Before I answer your question, I just want to mention that for the palm oil, for the certification for the palm oil is very difficult in Indonesia, especially in Indonesia, because if we are talking about the rice of organic rice or certification, organic certification, so if the rice get the organic certification, so there is also for the high price than the conventional rice, right? But for the palm oil in Indonesia, even they are certified palm oil, so if they are sent FFB to the mill, there is no different price. Because in formula in Indonesia of the palm oil, there is no value of the sustainability in the part of the formula of the price. So this is also the big issue in Indonesia. That means even the smallholder implemented the sustainability standard in their farm, so there is no the premium price. So this is the first point. So for the palm oil of the certification, the important thing is how the buyer also provide the incentive direct to the independent smallholders if they are implement the sustainability. So I think this is also the good point for the buyers, that if they are not provide the incentive to the smallholder after the certification, so I think the certification is not really interested by smallholders. This is and then I want to answer your question is about the finance access for the smallholders. We have the two level of the before they go to the certification. The first one is preparation for implementing the standard. Yeah, as I mentioned in before, that if the smallholders of palm oil, they want to implement the standard, so they have to like prepare everything. Okay, mapping the database or recording of the database, and also the smallholder have to ensure that they have a good organization, they have the strong organization, the good structure, the good legality and everything. So, and also they have to like have the training, have the program of the training, how to ensure that all of the member of the group is also get the training of the sustainability. And then also they have to like provide the audit, internal auditing for the members. So that means if they want to go to certification, they have to have the fund. And after certification, because you know, after certification, they also have to like provide the costs. They have to they have to follow the standard about the sustainability of the surveillance. So that means if the surveillance mean they have to also provide the cost for that. So in our experience, because for the preparing this is also costly, and after certification also costly, right? So we are working together with the buyer and also NGO, and also we are trying to how we can blend it with the national standard and also the global standard, because the sustainability standard is not, this is not about RSPO or ICC or another standard, but this is, we are talking about the sustainability. So this is the same, even the national or global or organic or everything or carbon certification. This is the same. We are talking about the how the smallholder can also recognize about the environment, about the social, about everything. Not only talking, not only thinking about the economic and income. So in our experience in Indonesia, we are working together with the local government and also the buyers. Buyer, I mean, not only the mill, but also the buyer from the Europe, like a Body Shop or Unilever and PepsiCo, and we have many buyers for, because they also have the program how to support the independent smallholder to comply with the standard, because they also need the material for certified. And but this is still taking time, because, you know, as I said, that we still have the 2.8 million smallholders outside of the still standing outside, and only 10,000 is already implement standard. So I think we have to working together, all buyer, consumer, how to ensure that independent smallholder implement the sustainability. So yeah, I agree with the Ron and also from Hermo also. We have to work together because we are still have a big homework. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks so much. I think we're almost at the end of our time. Ron, I'll hand it to you and then we'll move to our closing remarks.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something to reinforce what we just discussed about sustainable palm oil. I think there's an elephant in the room, and that's the power balance within the initiative itself. If you look at the voice of the industry, it's very big. There's a lot of representation, and the traditional partners have been big plantations. So for big plantations, because of the volume, they are at an advantage. So there's no level playing field for small producers versus big plantations. I think things will change in order if, as long as small producers get more voice and get more influence in the initiatives, because some of the criticism towards a roundtable on sustainable palm oil has been exactly that. It's the big voice of the industry and a very small voice of the producers.
Thank you very much. I'd like to pass the word to Santiago for closing remarks, and then as well my colleague Christina. So Santiago, please, over to you. I'm glad we've had such a great conversation. I want it to continue, and we can do so in other channels, as you said in the chat. Please, Santiago.
Thank you, Sarah, for moderating the dialogue, and thank you all the speakers for their great comments. I think from us in the United Nations, the key is to really look into what are the sort of opportunities and challenges for developing countries and developing countries producers, the smallholders, the small farmers with regards to the international trading system as we see it today. And in the United Nations, we feel that there's need for more transparency of many of these tools that we're putting forward or that there exist presently. There's need for more research. There's need for more capacity building, but of course, there's also need for more resources. I think there's a strong call from all the participants today for more resources to probably overcome some of those challenges that we have heard today. I think the kind of study and work that we have put together with IASD and UNCTAD by collecting data in specific data through surveys in the field shows the challenges that many of the small producers are facing in developing countries. And this should be the key of our work. And I would like to also, echo many of the comments that have been said here by the other speakers. We will continue providing the support because that's where we are. And we feel that it's very much a demand-driven issue. Voluntary sustainabilities are here, and they're here in our supply chains. They're a way that they regulate the way we trade, and we still need, and of course, we need to address all the various crises that we're facing presently in the world. Of course, the environmental, the social, and the economic crisis, and of course, many other issues. And this is only one of those instruments that can help us achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to thank my colleague, Nima and Ruby, for all their work. And I would like to thank also Sarah and Christina, and of course, all the other panelists and participants. Thank you. Sarah, over to you.
Thanks, and I'll hand the word to Christina for some closing remarks.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Sorry, thank you very much, Sarah, and thanks everyone for being with us today, and all the panelists for great insights and the high engagement of the audience. We had many questions and very good comments, and of course, pleasure working with Nima and Santiago on developing this chapter together. Just a few remarks. I would like to, at ISD, we are very, we work with the standards for a long time. We are very committed to strengthen the role of standards in developing countries. The diversification that Ron talked about, what our expert from ARSA mentioned, developing these demands and in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, I think is critical. And there was one comment from one person in the chat who mentioned it's very important to raise awareness among consumers about the value, not only the health value, as what was mentioning, as well as the environmental value, the social value, the economic value of these tools. And we just recently ended our research on that, and is a gap between the consumer intention and action that needs to be addressed, in particularly all over, but also in this producing country and developing countries. And I would like just to close this issue of price. It always comes up in all the dialogues, the price and paid farmers what they deserve for applying good practices. I think that's part of the as you know, the elephant in the room. And anyway, we have done a research on this the last couple of years, and then we're going to share some findings later on during the year. But it's not easy, I think, but mechanisms need to be put in place to reward farmers, and the price transparency across actors in the value chain, from consumers to farmers, is critical. And there are some value chain actors that are moving to establish technology to make sure they know how much the farmer was paid, and make sure we follow that transparency in order to make sure the farmers get that premium. Anyway, those thoughts I'm put on the table regarding price. And looking forward to continue engaging. I think we will share the link to the webinar as well as to the slides. And you know, thanks for this wonderful dialogue and valuable insights. And please reach us out if you would like to continue discussing or engaging. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thanks for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you the participants.
Thank you.
Thank you.